has got, unions having their affiliations, and there are large number of unions who are not having any political affiliation but are striving for. The secondary objective of industrial relations is to establish and foster sound relationship between workers and management by safeguarding their interests. It is to avoid conflict and strikes by developing mutuality among the interests of concerned parties. It also is to keep, as far as possible, strike, lockouts, and get-outs at bay, provide an opportunity to work, to participate in management and decision-making process, and provide an opportunity to the workers to participate in management decision-making, raise productivity in the organization, and avoid unnecessary interference. Now, in order to achieve these objectives, we find that large number of plans has been proposed by the government. Initially, if you look at when the first 5-year plan came into existence, or we talk about the Industrial Disputes Act of 1947, it proposed for the establishment of works committee in every organization employing 100 or more workers. Now, this works committee was a way of giving participation to the workers. Similarly, we also have got rules and laws which governs this relationship that we will see in the course of time. Now, establish and nurse industrial democracy based on labor partnerships in the sharing of profit and managerial decisions, and socialize industrial activity by involving government participation as an employer. Therefore, in brief, the objectives would be minimize conflict, allow workers to have a say in decision making, resolve conflicting issues with consultation and negotiation, and encourage and develop trade unions in order to improve the workers' collective strength. And it is also to pave the way for industrial democracy, which is the ultimate goal to achieve as a result of industrial relations. But there are large number of factors which affects industrial relations. That is, the communication is the most important factor. Communication acts as key factor in industrial relations. Why? Because normally when there is a strike or there is any industrial action, that is as a result of breaking of the communication between management and workers. Therefore, unions can affect industrial relations in a number of complex ways. This can be because of wage issues. This can be because of the benefits that is either not paid, or if it is paid, that is too less. So that can be there. And wage and benefits are perhaps the most obvious factors affecting industrial relations. And if you look at the Indian condition over last 30 years, there has been virtually no change in one fact, that majority of industrial strikes, the industrial disturbance has been because of wage or wage related issues, right? How much? As much as 30% of all strikes have been because of wage or wage related issues. All other factors are having smaller share than 10% as far as the reasons for industrial disturbance is concerned. Now, we also find that it is dependent on the ideology or ideology, whatever is there in the country, that also affects the industrial relations. It is also there that this ideology is related to the political establishment, that is the party that comes into power. Their ideology affects the industrial relations. For example, if you compare the Congress government, initially it had a different kind of a philosophy, but when the coalition government came, you talk about UPA 1, the industrial policy was different. In UPA 2, the policy was different because in one of them, left was an associate, and in the other left became an opposition party, and therefore the influence on industrial relation was there because of these associations as well. But as this government change to the rightist government, we find that this government has got a different kind of philosophy vis-a-vis the industrial relations. They are more harsh towards the unions, and therefore they don't care if there is anything. Any leader who comes up can only face punishment in terms of being behind the bar. So what we have is that industrial relation features would be employer-employee interactions, web of rules which would be there. We have multi-dimensionality which is there, dynamic and changing industrial relations would be there. A spirit of compromise and accommodation is a part of it. Government rule would be there. A spirit of wide coverage of industrial relations would be there, and there would be interactive and consultative in nature as far as these industrial relations are concerned. Now, industrial relations are influenced by various factors, that is institutional factor, economic factor, and technological factor as well. If you look at institutional factor, these factors include government policy, labor legislation, voluntary courts, collective agreements, employee courts, employers federation, social institutions like community caste, joint family, creed, system of beliefs, attitude of workers, and system of power status. Right? So there are large number of factors under the institutional factors, as we could see. In terms of economic factor, these factors include economic organizations like capitalist, communist, mixed, whatever is there, the economic organizations. The structure of labor force, the demand for and supply of labor force that is available in the open market, and technological factors would be mechanization, automation, rationalization, and computerization, etc. that we have got. So this is the government rules, awards, and policies for industrial relations major influence. We have got employers' influence, we have got employees' influence, we have got employers' associations' influence, and we have got trade unions' influence. This is the customer traditions within a country that it affects. Therefore, sound industrial relations, the importance and essential conditions has to be industrial relations are essential for emerging industrial peace and improved productivity. Cordial labor management relation enables employer to secure cooperation and commitment of the employees. It is not, however, easy to promote and maintain sound industrial relations, as we know. Therefore, existence of strong and well-organized and democratic employees' unions are needed. Existence of sound and organized employers' union and federations are needed. A spirit of collective bargaining and willingness to resort to voluntary negotiations rather than asking for compulsory arbitration needed. Maintenance of industrial peace is also a perspective. We also have got to establish machinery for prevention and settlement of dispute, provision of bipartite and tripartite committees to resolve proper personnel policies, and establish committees to evaluate collective bargaining and create proper machinery which quickly implements these objectives. Now, industrial conflicts, forms and causes can be that industrial conflicts constitute organized protests against existing industrial conditions. They are symptoms of industrial unrest. Now, industrial disputes, as described in the Industrial Disputes Act of 1947, is characterized by the following features. There should be a difference or dispute. The dispute could be between employer, employee, or it can be between employer and employer, employees and employees, or it could be employer and employees. So three forms of dispute can be there. The dispute must pertain to some work-related issues. Personal issues are not included in this. The disputes must be raised by a group or class of workers. For example, the dispute between one or more workers and respective employer is not an industrial dispute at all. The forms can be a lockout, it can be ghirao, it can be picketing and boycott. A lockout, if you look at, can be closing down of an establishment or suspension of work or refusal of employer to continue to employ any number of persons employed by him or her is known as lockout, right? So the lockout is always from the side of the employer. Now, ghirao is something that is from the side of the employee, which means to surround. It is method a group of workers initiate collective action aimed at preventing members of the management from leaving the office, right?
Yes, sir.
Picketing and boycott, when picketing workers often carry or display signs or banners or placards, prevent others from entering the place of work, that is the industries, and persuade others to join the strikes. That is called picketing or boycott. This is also a popular form. There can also be, pen down or tool downs, which is there a form of a strike. So it can be employment related, it can be nationalization, it can be administration related, it can be recognition as a bargaining agent, it can be psychological and social issues which will be related, it can be institutional causes, and it can be political causes as well for the industrial disputes. Now, as we all know, that when the relationship between the parties is not cordial or it is having discontentment develops and conflict erupts abruptly, it is not always easy to put out the fires with the existing dispute settlement machinery. And therefore, we call this a firefighting function. Hence, both labor and management must appreciate the importance of openness, trust, and collaboration. Their day-to-day dealings will be important. Now, machinery for prevention and settlement of disputes are given on this slide. You find that we have got voluntary methods, which are called collective bargaining. We have trade union. We have joint consultation. We have standing orders that is there. We have grievance procedure, which is established by the organizations. We have got code of discipline. These are all voluntary methods of controlling a dispute in the organizations. Then we have got government machinery for labor administration, which are established at both at a state level and at the central levels. But this is not a popular form of machinery that is adopted by the employers and employee. Therefore, we look at the statutory measures, which are basically the acts which provides for it. For example, the Industrial Disputes Act of 1947 and the state acts are also there. So we have got works committee that is being established. We have got conciliation machinery, where conciliation officer and board of conciliation is there. We have got arbitration, both voluntary arbitration and compulsory arbitration. We have got adjudication, which is a three-tier machinery, and ultimate remedy available at the industry level, which is called labor court, industrial relation tribunals, and national tribunals. We will go through majority of them in this particular course as we progress. So machinery for settlement of industrial dispute for example, Works Committee is, as the Industrial Disputes Act 1947 provides for it, that Works Committee have to be set up in all industrial units which employs 100 or more workers, and it is basically a consultative body. Now, it has got equal number of members, that is, both employer and employee will have equal number of members. Maximum number of members can be 20. Now it has got 3 office bearers. One is called the chairman of the committee. There will be vice chairman of the committee, and there will be secretary of the committee. Now, chairman is the representative of the employer, vice chairman is the representative of the workers, and secretary is elected by the members themselves when they are operating. Now, they are to see that working condition at the workplace is normal, and if there is anything missing, they tend to ensure that provision is being made by the employer. And therefore, what we have is that it gives greater participation to workers. It ensures close interaction between labor and management. It generates cooperative atmosphere for negotiation between the two parties, that is, employer and employees. It is also opening the door to unions to have a clear view of what is going on within the units, and strengthening the spirit of voluntary settlement of disputes which are there. There is another body which is called Joint Management Council, popularly known as JMC. The JMC is normally consists of equal number of representatives of workers and employers, looking after 3 things, that is information sharing, consultative and administrative matters related to welfare, safety, training, etc., and the formulation of standing orders, of course, without encouraging any form of industrial action. Now, this JMC was established upon establishment of a committee after 1947, and they toured several countries like England, France, Germany, Yugoslavia, etc., and they suggested for the formulation of Joint Management Council for the government, and as a result of this, it came out after the first 5-year plan. Now, the standing orders, as JMC suggests, these are the rules and regulations which govern the conditions of employment of workers, and the Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act of 1947 provides for framing industrial orders in all industrial undertakings employing 100 or more workers. Now, this Standing Orders Act was passed way back in 1947, which made the terms and conditions of employment uniform, and it said that any individual bargaining or any individual agreement between employer and employee is not permitted after the passing of the Industrial Disputes Act, Standing Orders Act, which is called Industrial Employment Standing Orders Act of 1946. Then we have got grievance procedure. A model grievance procedure was suggested by the Indian Labour Conference of 1958, which was established, which was held in New Delhi in the summer of 1958, and it suggested that voluntary measures should be adopted because a statutory measure was not working, because it was very, very difficult for workers to accept any kind of pressure in terms of acts and institutes, and therefore this an Indian Labour Conference was held, which was having the participation of the Employers Federation, Major Employers Federation, and Major Employees Federation, and both of them jointly agreed for adopting certain measures. One of them is called grievance procedure. We will look at the grievance procedure in detail. Then code of discipline is also suggested by the same, conference, that is Indian Labour Conference in 58, which suggested that a code has to be established for employer, a code has to be established for the employee, and there should be a code which both of them should jointly agree to. Now, it consists of a set of self-imposed obligations voluntarily formulated by the central organizations of workers and the employers, as it suggests. Then we have got industrial disputes settlement machinery. Now, settlement machinery is conciliation, the practice by which the services of neutral third party is being sought. This third party should not be associated with the organization as such, and here this is called a quasi-judicial system through which they are trying to achieve industrial peace as far as the conciliation is concerned. Now, conciliation officer is appointed, in this case, an authority appointed by the government to mediate dispute between parties brought to his or her notice, enjoying the powers of civil court. Now, this officer called conciliation officer enjoys the power of a civil court. It is supposed to give judgment within 14 days of the commencement of the conciliation proceedings. So there is a binding of 14 days, which is not there in case of the civil courts or criminal courts in India. Now, we also have got Board of Conciliation, which is comprised of more than one member. The board is an ad hoc tripartite body having conciliation officer. It is also having the power of a civil court created for a specific dispute, so it is not for all time. When the conciliation officer fails to resolve dispute within time frame, this board is constituted by the government, that is the appropriate government. It can be central government or state government. Now, the court of inquiry is also there. In case the conciliation proceedings fail to resolve dispute, a court of inquiry is constituted by the government to investigate the disputes and submit the report within 6 months of the constitution of such report. Now, machinery for settlement of industrial disputes are voluntary arbitration. It is the process in which the disputing parties show willingness, that is, voluntarily they submit the disputes to arbitrator, who is a third party, and submit it to the his decision voluntarily. Now, this arbitration is also compulsory, where the arbitrator is appointed by the government on the request of the parties, and the decisions of compulsory arbitration is binding on the parties, whereas voluntary arbitration's decision is not binding on the parties. Any decision that is taken under the compulsory arbitration can be appealed into any court of law under section 226 of the Industrial Disputes Act. Now, the Industrial Disputes Act provides for 3-tier adjudication machinery consisting of labor court, industrial tribunal, and national tribunal, that we will see in detail in due course, right? Okay. I'll get to another slide. Right. Uh, One of the measures that we mentioned is called grievance procedure. Now, grievance procedure by definition, have you ever worked for an employer who you believed did not meet the terms of your employment contract? Perhaps you are not fully compensated for your work that you have done for them, or you're experienced unsafe working conditions. In this situation, you may wish to file a formal complaint against your employer. This is known as an employee grievance, right? Now, whether the grievance is valid or not, it can have a negative effect on the employee morale, productivity, and retention. Organization must therefore have policies and procedures in place to address employees' grievances. This is an important human resource management function. Now, types of grievance can be related to pay and benefits. This is the most common area of employee complaint and grievances. These grievances may involve the amount and qualification of pay and increases, pay equity for comparable work within the organization, and the cost and coverage of benefits programs that is there in the organization. It can also be related to workload, that is, heavy workloads are common employee and workplace grievance. If you work for a company that is going through lean times, you may have been asked to take on more work without pay increase. Perhaps your employer decides not to fill a vacant position and instead assign additional work to your colleagues. Such situations lead to employee frustrations and dissatisfaction. There can be working conditions, as we said, safe and clean working conditions. That is, the environment is crucial to employee satisfaction and motivation. It can be because of union and management relations. When unions representing employee, both the unions and management must avoid unfair labor practices. And now, this unfair labor practices is unnecessary, strikes without notice or lockdown without proper notice. All those things are unfair labor practices, or encouraging their members to take actions or instigating each other for some kind of action. The National Labor Relations Act specifies unlawful activities for employers and unions. For example, employers cannot threaten employees with termination if they vote for a union. Similarly, employees may file grievances when they experience unfair labor practices within the organization. Now, grievance is a feeling of discontent or dissatisfaction or distress or suffering among workers. Now, this spelling of suffering is wrong here. When employees feel that injustice has been done to them, it becomes grievance. Any dissatisfaction or feeling of injustice in connection with one's employee or employment situation that is brought to the notice of the management. This is what EFL Beck has to say. Now, features of grievance is that the grievance reflects a dissatisfaction among workers concerning any aspect of organization. Dissatisfaction must arouse out of employment only. Dissatisfaction, if you know, may be out of real or imaginary causes. This grievance arise only if employee feels that injustice has been done to them, and the grievance results from perceived on fulfillment of expectations from the organizations. Now, the characteristics of grievance is it can be factual, it can be imaginary, or it can be a disguised kind of thing. Any of the situation can be there. Now, as we know, the causes of grievances are employment conditions like wage rates, etc., supervision, general working conditions, trade union, difference of union and management and employees, adherence to rules by employer while dealing with certain employees, and psychological reasons can also be there as far as these grievances are concerned. Now, the grievance should be clear so that it is easy to find solution. Once the issue is clear, all relevant factors should be collected, employees' viewpoints and supervisors' reaction should be collected. Before giving final decision, the management should see the reaction of both the parties on the same decision in past, and decision is then conveyed to the concerned person. And last step is to see whether employee is satisfied with the decisions or not. Now, methods of anticipating grievances would be observations. It can be grievance procedure. It can be exit interview. It can be opinion survey. It can be gripe boxes, and it can be open door policy, which are there. Essentials of success of grievance handling would be legal sanctity, acceptability, unambiguity, simplicity, promptness, training, and follow-up actions. Now, the model of grievance procedure comprises of 5 steps. There is a model grievance procedure which was first established by the Tata group of companies, which has become popular, and now it is being followed by almost all organizations. Now, the first step is that aggrieved employee shall convey his or her grievance verbally to the officer designated by the management to deal with the grievance. So it is the person who is aggrieved shall have to convey verbally about his grievance to the designated officer who is designated by the management to deal with the grievance. The grievance officer will have to reply to the complaint within 48 hours of its presentation to him or her. Now, within 48 hours, the reply has to be given, which has been verbally conveyed to and verbally replied by the party. The second, if it is not received in time or the worker is not satisfied with the answer, it will move to the second step. Now, at the second step, if the grievant is not satisfied with the answer or does not receive the answer within 48 hours, he or she shall then present the grievance to departmental head nominated for this purpose, and here he will be joined by the departmental representative of the union. Departmental representative of the union, right? The head must give his or her reply within 3 days. There it was 48 hours. Here it is within 3 days of the presentation of such grievance. Now, this has to be in writing. Now, if the aggrieved employee is still not satisfied with the decision of the departmental head or does not receive a reply within the stipulated period of time, that is 3 days, the employee can approach to the grievance committee, which is established by the organizations, which is there at the third step. The grievance committee has to give its recommendation in 7 days. Now, earlier were 48 hours and 3 days. This is 7 days. The management must communicate the decision to the grievant within 3 days. Now, after 7 days, the decision will be submitted to management, and within 3 days of receiving that decision, the management has to convey that to the grievant, right? Now, step 4 is that if still the employee is not satisfied either with the decision made by the grievance committee or does not receive decision from the committee, he or she can make appeal to the management for revision of such decisions, right? And that appeal here, the government can take a week period to appeal to the considered. So the management can take a week period to appeal to be considered and the revised decision to inform to the grievant. So here to the time period, and on the third step, the fourth step also, it is 1 week time. Now, we only move to fifth step because it is a 5-step process. If the employee is still not satisfied with the management's decision, the grievance is referred to voluntary arbitration within a week after decision taken by the management at stage 4. The decision of the arbitrator is final and binding on both parties, i.e. the management and the workers. So fifth step, the dispute will be referred to arbitration, that is voluntary arbitration, and it will be binding on the parties. Now, if you look at this particular diagram, it shows the steps that we have discussed. Grievant at the first step conveys grievance to verbally to designated officer, and if they are not satisfied or not, a reply is not in time, then we move to stage 2, where grievant plus departmental representatives will approach in writing to head of the department, who has to give decision within 3 days. Now, if there is no satisfaction or reply is not time, step 3 is followed, and similar procedure is followed at step 4 and step 5 as we have. Now, this brings us to the end of grievance procedure and today's session. Thank you very much. If you have any question, please feel free. Do you have any question?